Hello everyone, welcome to this week's On the Road. And this week's stop is at a familiar location to a lot of you probably. There's a young man that I'm going to be talking to who knows quite a bit about Bristol, and we don't know a whole lot about him, so we're going to try to find out today. And I'm speaking, of course, about Bristol historian Bud Phillips. And Bud, it's good to see you. My goodness, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Welcome to Pleasant Hill.
Yes, sir. Back to Studio One.
Right.
Yes, sir. And so
we use this a lot when you were making shows for me here.
Yes, sir. And so I did want to get caught up on how you are, where you've been, how are things going. I know you've been busy, and I see your column in the Bristol Herald Courier every Sunday. Enjoy reading that. And I understand you're also doing a television show for, I think, the city of Bristol's government channel.
Tennessee, yeah.
In Bristol, Tennessee, right? So
Yeah.
Bring us up to date. How are things going with you?
Well, I've hardly been off the hill for a long time. Of course, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. I do go short distances, but as far as going long distances, I just haven't been barely out of Bristol for a good while now. Stay pretty close to home. The farthest I've been since the new car was given me 4 years ago, the furthest I've ever been is Stanton, Virginia, 224 miles.
Well, that's one way, or is that a round trip?
That's one way.
One way, okay.
It's 224 to downtown Stanton from here.
Yeah.
And that's the only long trip I've ever made. I never have to want for something to do. There's always something to do here. In fact, I'm starting a new book now. There'll be another one out one of these days.
Oh, my goodness. We're going to talk about some of your previous books in a moment, but right now, tell us what you got in mind, not without giving away too much.
Well, it's actually a continuation of the last hardback of mine that came out, which is called A Good Place to Live.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the official publication of the Bristol Sesquicentennial in 2006. But they cut it in two, made volume one, and there's about half of it's never been published. So I'm going to publish that along with some other things. And I haven't been easy to talk into this, but by popular request, they wanted me to put my biography in the back of it.
Okay.
Well, they didn't say the back, but that's where I'm going to put it.
That's where you're going to put it?
Yeah. But even then, it'll leave some mysteries probably, but that's going to be part of it.
All right. By how long will it be before that's out?
Well, I don't know. My wonderful, faithful volunteer secretary has a pretty good, heavy burden on him right now. And I don't know how long it's going to take him. He's supposed to bring the first chapter back this afternoon late and tell me how long it took to do those 15 or 20 pages, and then we'll kind of get an estimate on how long it's going to take.
Right.
But it's going to be a sizable book. It won't be just a little booklet. It'll be a sizable book.
You've written how many books so far?
Well, Bristol books. Now, before I did that, I had a few out, like mostly folklore and stuff like that. They're all out of print now. But my Bristol books still in print, counting the softbacks, paperbacks, would be 8 volumes. I had the goal when I started to write 10 volumes, so this other one will make 9. So maybe I'll have time to write another one. But these have come since 1992. Of course, I was working on them long before that, but the first of this set was published in '92, and they're all still in print and still selling very well to have been out that long. So when number 9 comes out, hopefully it will get a good place in the set. I don't know how long it'll be. I'm sure it's going to be a while because it's a slow process. You've got to set it up to suit the publishing house, and that's not always the easiest thing to do. But if things go well, we'll have it one of these days.
All right, then to keep rolling, but Bud, take your watch and fix it. It's sort of hanging down there. No, you don't have to hide it, but just fix it where it's hanging over.
Maybe there's a glare in it.
No.
Okay.
It just looked out of place like that. Okay. All right, we're still rolling. Okay. We'll pick it up here, Logan, in 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Now, as far as your books go, are they all based mainly on your experiences after you came to Bristol, before you came to Bristol? Just where do you get your ideas?
Well, actually they're based on things that happened long before I ever saw Bristol. My forte in writing is back in the 1800s. After you clip over on 1900, I kind of lose interest. Not enough to not to write at all, but I do write some on the 1900s. In fact, I sat right here in this chair till 11 o'clock last night and wrote an article for the newspaper that only goes back to 1959. But that's very unusual for me.
Yeah.
Most of my writings before 1900. And I had to depend on other sources. Of course, I wasn't here. Now, one of these fellows that believes in reincarnation told me that I'd been alive and lived in Bristol 3 different times before now. Well, he even told me the block in which I lived and
Really? Well,
all that.
did you go visit it to see for sure?
I pass it every few days,
Okay.
right downtown.
Yeah.
Back when there's houses on Main Street down there, residential
Yeah.
houses.
Okay.
There was a time when downtown Bristol was part business and part residential. You might have 2 or 3 big brick stores and then a house wedged in between them. That's what he says. But anyway, I had to get other sources. Well, when I came here, there was what I call a bunch of second-generation pioneers living. That is, the children of the really early settlers of Bristol. And they told me a lot about what happened here. I heard their parents talk about from the very beginning, you know. And then I went into the courthouses and got all kinds of records there, and just had to depend on. No, I've written very little from memory. I've written just a composition or two on how I remembered Bristol from my time. But most of this is what came down from other generations past.
Well, we're going to get back to the books in a moment, but I want to talk about you, the person. We know you're the Bristol historian now. Your knowledge is just unbelievable. You're like a walking encyclopedia, I guess, of the history of Bristol. But take us back to where Bud Phillips was born and how you migrated to Bristol.
Well, I'll be glad to tell you that. It's little known. One fellow said, "You're the best known and best unknown person I know in Bristol." Said, "What really do we know about you?"
Yeah.
And so I said, "Well, someday, just hold on. I'm planning to give in and write a biography." But I was born in Johnson County, Arkansas. That's about, to give a little better location, it's about 100 miles northwest of Little Rock, the state capital. I was born in the Ozark National Forest. I literally grew up in the woods. And I left home when I was 15 without a dime in my pocket. I wouldn't be brave enough to do that now, but I thought I could survive, and I did, and I have all these years. Went to the little county seat town, which was only 3,700 population at the time. And I did make it there. The College of the Ozarks, which is now the University of the Ozarks, took me off the street and gave me a job and a home to live, a dormitory. I lived with the big boys right there in the dormitory. I really got some education in there. But anyway, that old dormitory is standing today just like it was the day I left it. Man showed it to me on the internet the other day, where they take those pictures from there.
Yeah.
And so on. But anyway, from that, and I guess you wonder how I ever wound up here. My youngest sister came here to visit. She's only 85.
Only 85, okay.
She came here to visit one time, and I met her at the bus station, and the first question she asked when she stepped off the bus said, "How did you ever wind up here?" Well, I wound up here by way of Kentucky. The reason I'm sitting here today, I likely would have been in California somewhere if it hadn't been for this. But the reason I'm here today is because I developed a strong, overpowering curiosity to know who I really was. My mother didn't know a thing about her family. She didn't know who her grandparents were, didn't know who her uncles or aunts were, barely knew who her parents were. And her mother died when mother was only 7, and her father wouldn't tell her anything. And he had reason not to. He left Kentucky, shall we say, under pressure. And he wouldn't tell anything about his past. All she knew was they came from Kentucky, and Kentucky's a pretty big state.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where her half brother, my half uncle, said just out of Clear Blue Sky one time mentioned he wasn't trying to locate anything. He just said, "I've heard my daddy talk about a place called Partridge, Kentucky." Well, that kind of interested me. Partridge, I thought was a bird, but
Yeah.
it's the name of a little community over in Kentucky. I've got a good world atlas and found it on the map. Well, it's 5 miles, and you'd have been in Virginia from there, and it's only about 100 miles from here. So I wrote a letter to the editor, published in the Mountain Eagle, the only newspaper. I didn't know the name of the paper. I just addressed it to the editor of the oldest newspaper in Whitesburg, Kentucky. There's no problem. They only had one. And the postmaster gave it to him, and he published the letter. And within days, I had a pile of mail at home. They were just as interested to find out about my mother's people as I was. They didn't know what had happened to them. They just went to Arkansas and disappeared. So that brought me there. And I stayed a year among the families over there, writing the history of my mother's family. That book is still available, not from me, but it's published in Johnson City now. But I wrote that book, and that got me started writing kind of. And then I decided I wanted to come to Bristol. I'd been through here a time or two, and I wanted to go to school again. So I got in touch with the college here, and they encouraged me all they could to come on. So I came here. I landed here on August 20th, 1953 at 4 p.m. I was within a block and a half of home and didn't know it. I was down at the old bus station on Piedmont. I never in the world thought I'd ever live right down on that hill, but here I am today. I meant to stay 9 months. Next August the 20th, it'll be 60 years.
Wow, my goodness.
I guess you could call me a naturalized citizen.
I guess you could now, right? That's true. That's very interesting. And of course, now you said your youngest sister. Now you're
I'm 83 and a half.
83 and a half, but you're still quite spry for your age. You don't look your age for sure. And then you get around really well. I mean, you see you everywhere, which is great.
Well, when I was younger, say in 20s and 30s, I thought anybody 75 was dead old.
Yeah.
I've heard them tell, they said my grandfather died at 77. Well, I thought he was an ancient old man at 77.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you just gradually slip into it. Most people give up and act like they're old. Well, I can't do that because I'm too busy and active in things. So I just gradually slipped into it. I can't tell much difference from 10 years ago. It's just living, going along living. And thank the Lord I'm able to do my work and keep on writing and things like that. So a lot of people, well, there's 3 distinct ages. Man has 3 distinct ages. There's the age by the calendar, that's 83 and a half. There's the physiological age, that's physical age. I don't know about that. I don't know. All I know is I'm still able to go and eat and sleep and so on. And then the most important of all is your psychological age. Mm-hmm. I'm 21 psychologically.
Yeah, okay. I can believe that.
So if you never run out, the main thing, my advice to anybody out there that's growing old is don't ever run out of ambition to do something. Keep an interest and keep going.
Sure.
If you retire, get something else to work at.
That's right.
And go to it.
Sure. And you've heard people say, when I retire, I'm not going to sit in a rocking chair on the porch and just waste away.
No
Got to
way.
keep busy. So.
No way.
All right. And well, now I know that you're at one time you were, and hopefully that it doesn't get to you physically, in demand for speaking engagements. Are you still being requested a lot for that?
I've slowed down a little bit in that. Mainly because last year I had a sciatic nerve in the back hip, in the left hip, and it's hard to walk there for a while. I had to use a walker. No, I hated the thing, but I had to. And then I graduated to a walking cane, and now I've lost the walking cane, so I don't need it anymore. But it was, for a while there, it was hard for me to stand. I couldn't stand very long without getting real tired. But that's more or less gone away. I started back by sitting down and making speeches, and now I'm able now to stand up just like I always was. So that's gradually gone away, and hopefully it'll never come again. I've talked to a lot of people who had the same trouble, and they said, well, I had it bad, but went away and never has happened more.
Well, that's great. Sure glad to hear that, because if you couldn't see Bud Phillips out somewhere, you'd be wondering what's going on.
Well,
You'd have an influx of people heading this way, I guess, to check on you. But it's great that you're out.
Yeah, I'm back pretty much in the beacon circuit again now, pretty much so.
Well, now, when you came to Bristol and you observed everything that was going on, and it sort of apparently locked in your mind because your stories in the Bristol Herald Courier on Sunday, your books based on some of it, and I enjoy reading the stories about the early settlers of Bristol, the different names for Bristol, and the different business people. And there were some characters along the way.
You better believe there was some. I had one in the paper last Sunday, a man they called Harold John Burson.
Yes, sir, I read that.
An adopted great-granddaughter of his called me yesterday, wanting to know more information
Wow,
about it.
that's tremendous, yeah. You know what's really so interesting about it, when you mention that, how when you do put an article in the paper or somewhere, somehow the word gets out about somebody in the 1800s or whatever, there's still some people living in this area that's related to them.
Oh,
whether it be great, or whatever.
It's nothing uncommon after an article comes out. Somebody calls from way off somewhere and want to know about things. They're able to get it in far places somewhere. That column popped up in England not long ago, and we got calls from England about it.
My goodness.
When my phone rings, it may be the next door neighbor, it may be somebody in Australia. And that's literally true. And I get a lot of more information that way. People calling about their relatives.
Right.
I wrote about the first tombstone maker in Bristol here a while back. And I didn't have very little information about him, just enough to kind of squeeze out an article. That came out on Sunday. On Tuesday, a man called me from northern Illinois and said that was my wife's great-grandfather.
Well, my goodness.
And he told me more about him than I had before.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about him, really. But I have all kinds of readers. There's some that like one thing, some like another. So I like sitting down to a table. I like to give them a variety. Ever so often, the people will get to wanting a ghost tale.
Oh, yes.
Well, I try to oblige about, on the average, about every 3 months. I'll give that segment of my reading audience a ghost tale. That's what I was sitting here writing last night. And that's a very recent ghost, 1959.
Yeah.
Called Ghost Light on Holston Mountain.
Oh, okay. Now that's a familiar subject. People have talked about that before.
Well,
that light on the mountain.
A plane crashed up there.
Uh-huh.
And the snow was over time the plane crashed, but it's still hazy around, and we don't know yet what made the plane crash. But a search crew got out, and they began to get a light signal from way up on the mountain. They thought somebody had survived and was given the signal. And even they would shake the light back and forth, and that thing would answer them, shake the light back and forth. And they sent a National Guard plane to fly over the site, and he couldn't see anything for the haze. But when that happened, the light went crazy, just shining in every direction, like it's trying desperately to get their attention. Well, they made it to the site next day, about mid-afternoon the next day. It was very apparent that every person on the plane is only 10. 3 members in the crew, 3 crew members and a passenger, 7 passengers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small plane. And it was evident that they had been killed instantly. There was no, in the new-made snow, there was no sign that there had been any struggles or anything, and certainly no footprints around. No one had survived. Well, David McBride, who was working for the newspaper here then, he got kind of interested in the deal, and he said there's something strange here. And he had got 1 or 2 of the search crew to help him, and they searched the whole area, and they couldn't even find a flashlight. There wasn't a light available anywhere.
Yeah, that is scary, yeah. That is ghostly.
That story got written up in Williamsburg not long ago in a ghost book.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a local bluegrass music band that had a song out about the lights on Holston Mountain. I may be referring to that.
I think that was probably what it was.
But,
used to a train wreck or anything, somebody'd write a song.
Somebody write a song. You're right. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
The Rye Cove Tornado, the Carter family put out a song.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. A.P. Carter is well known for that.
I've got it right here in this room, one of the records.
Right. Well, now, one thing that I like about my show is it's informal, and I'm just going to reach over here and get this stack of books.
Well, sure, that's
And
fine.
we've got to get to talking to them because I don't know how we're doing on time, but I don't want to run out of time to at least scan over them. And I'm going to save one in particular for last because it's, if nobody has it, they need to get it, because if you've got a bad day going on, you need this book. It'll take care of it in a hurry.
Laughter does good like a medicine.
Absolutely. Laughter is the best medicine. You're right. Let's just start out with the very first book. And Liz, I'm going to hold it up for you to just sort of get a shot of it, and Bud can just sort of tell us a little bit about it as we go. This is the very first book, right?
That's book number 1. I worked about 5 years on that, and it was published, came out in March of 1992. It's been reprinted about 3 times. It's had to run through about 3 editions, and no changes made except in the cover. But that's the one I recommend to a person starting out. That's book 1. That will tell you the details about why Bristol's here and how it came to be and all. So I recommend that for the first reader.
Okay. All right. Now let's switch over to the next one. And this is a very interesting book. A lot of interest over the past few years about the Civil War.
Indeed. That's my Civil War book, and it probably has outsold them all. Now, it's a toss-up between it and another one, but it possibly has outsold them all. And I wrote that in a hurry. It could have been twice that big, but they was pushing me hard to get it out. And so it's a small book, but there's much more I could have written in that book. That's all over. I found one at the flea market the other day. So somebody, I guess, had read it and passed it on.
You passed it on, made a couple of bucks off of it maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, now we're going to get to the Book of Kings. And some folks are a little bit confused about the name King with regards to the college, which is now King University, and other King-related areas in Bristol.
Okay, that looks like just a family genealogy, but it's not. It's actually another form of history for Bristol. Of course, there's a lot of genealogy in it. Now, this particular set of kings, there's 4 or 5 sets around here of kings, and none of them supposedly related. But this is what I call the old pioneer kings that came in here real early and had the ironworks and everything. And this was the king for whom King College, King University now is named. Old Reverend James King. Well, he has many descendants, but right now I don't know of one that has the King name. They came through the daughters and so on. There may be some in Montana that still have the King name. But this book at first didn't move very fast because people thought it was just a family history and they wasn't too interested. But it got better and better, and now the sales are better on this one than probably any other book now.
Oh, wow.
It's got to be of interest. One good thing that came out of that, I guess it's a good thing, the old king heirs that are still living around here, and there's several of them in some different places, they were so pleased that their family history finally got in the book that they made me an adopted king.
Well, all right. Well, I guess that's quite an honor then.
Well, they gave me the family coat of arms hanging in the front hall yonder. And the old-timers of the bunch, they'll write me even, they'll address it to Cousin Bud Phillips, they'll say.
Well.
And if they see me out somewhere, they'll say, well, dear Cousin Bud, it's so good to see you.
Well, all right. That's great. All right. Now let's go on to the Pioneers in Paradise. I've heard a lot about this one. How did it do?
That's a rip-roaring book if there ever was.
Yes, sir.
It tells it exactly like it was. It doesn't mince any words about it. I've got a reputation for telling things like they were, and that's what the reader finds out when he reads that book. I just told it like it was. And some people read it and said, oh, Bud's in trouble now. Somebody will get him short. And I said, I've never got but one little piece of flack about it, and that went away right easy without any trouble. But most of it's taken court records. Well, who can argue with a court record? It tells how Bristol in the earliest days was a wild, woolly, wide open, rip-roaring town. I almost called this book Hell on the Border, but that would have been borrowing a title, which you can do. You can't copyright a title. And there's a novel out called Hell on the Border. Mexico and Texas, what it's written on.
Okay.
But I almost called it that. But this Pioneers in Paradise name I dreamed that name one night.
Oh, well.
It came to me in a dream, and I called the publisher the next day, and he said, "That's it.
That's it. All right.
Yeah, use it." So,
Okay. Now we're getting short on time. I want to rush through these because I want to get to this one book.
okay.
And then this is your last book.
That's the official book of the Sesquicentennial, which we celebrated in 2006. But it's only half of it, and this new book will contain most of what would have been in the half that was left out. There'll be some more added to it, but I'm not sure I'm going to use the same name, Volume 2, but anyway, we probably will.
All right. Okay. Okay. Now moving right along, as they say in show business, we've got just a couple more. This is the.
Well, that's just a selection of my newspaper columns. I would love to put all those newspaper columns in one book, and may do it one of these days. But this is a selection of them. They just picked, the publisher in South Carolina just picked out the ones they like best and put in there.
Okay.
They made a fairly good selection.
And then we touched on it a moment ago, this one about the ghosts.
Anytime you write anything about ghosts, it can be crudely written and crudely published. It's going to sell. People will buy it.
They'll buy it if it just says ghost, right?
Right.
Okay, here's the one I was telling you about, folks. If you're feeling bad, get a copy of this book, and I guarantee you'll feel better in a hurry.
Yeah, I wrote that. I've proofread it 2 or 3 times, and I've read it through several times, and yet I have big laughing fits even now when I read it.
Yeah, it's a hoot. I'm telling you. If you get this book, like I said, you cannot feel bad anymore if you get this book and read just part of it.
I prescribe it for people to read when
Yes,
they're down
sir.
in the dumps sometimes.
Right. Well, now, you have been busy, obviously, and we've just barely scratched the surface on talking to you, and I'll have to come back and do another show in the future.
That'll
But
be okay.
I do thank you for inviting us into your home. We're on Old Pleasant Hill in Bristol, and looking forward to seeing you out and about when the weather breaks, of course. I know you,
Oh, yeah, I'll
like
be
me,
out.
I don't like to get out in the cold too much.
I'll be out then a lot.
And we'll see you out and about and go over some more stories. And in the meantime, if folks would like to get in touch with you, do you want them to just give you a phone call?
Oh, yeah.
And let's get your phone number, and we'll put it up on the screen so they can call you. I hope they'll call and buy your books.
Well, they're always welcome to do that. You want
The phone number? Uh-huh.
Okay, 276-466-6435, and if you don't remember that, remember it appears in the newspaper every Sunday. My phone number is right under the article.
Right, okay. Good point. Yes, sir.
It's in the paper.
And be sure to read Bud's columns in the Sunday edition of the Bristol Herald Courier. Some great stories. And we, like I said, we just barely scratched the surface today, but we'll get back and I want to sort of zoom in on and do maybe a whole show on ghost stories, because I know
Okay.
you've got a bunch of them.
Okay.
All right, Bud, thank you again, my friend. Good seeing you after
Well,
too many
it's nice
years.
to have you here.
All right, thank you for being with me this week, and I hope to see you on my next stop somewhere on the road.